Easy then, welcome to the Asylum. It's me, Gunnar, in a chair of destiny, joined as always by my able compatriot CK. Hey up, fella.
Hello, mate.
How are you, buddy?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm really well, matey. I'm doing okay, actually. Looking forward to an exciting interview tonight.
Yes, absolutely. Although you've gone a bit grey and plain, and you've changed your face to words.
I've changed my face to words. Can you not see me at the moment? What can you see?
I can't see you. Hopefully, the viewers at home get to see your beautiful face.
Dude, this is not a beautiful face. I'm not going to lie. The English summertime has passed me by. I'm kind of a grey, pale, sort of blue colour.
Oh, no different from usual then.
Well, speaking of lack of colour, that's me. Steve Mera, of course, has a wonderful talent. Tonight we dig into one of the biggest mysteries and contentious mysteries of the year, the three-fingered alien mummies of Peru and Mera. For many years...
Nothing to do with Steve's tan then.
I was about to get to this because he's been jetting around the world, hasn't he? So he's nice and got a lovely colour to him, Chris, unlike me and you who've been here on Rainy Rock. For many years, there have been countless claims of amazing discoveries, be it small winged beings such as fairies, coastal discoveries of strange washed-up creatures, to small alien beings in the way of mummies. We've been involved in many of those discoveries, or Steve, I should say, and Barry have been involved in many of those discoveries that reach international.
I missed that,
dude, where were you? You should have been there, CK. Should have been there when that skinless raccoon washed up. Where were you?
Exactly. Where was I?
Now, these smaller known creatures caught in traps that turn out to be tailless bald monkeys, not me, Chris, of course. Numerous alleged mummified remains of alien bodies that often turn out to be nothing more than a mummified child. However, recent discoveries of the three-fingered beings in Peru has been somewhat of a challenge. Mr. Steve Mera, good evening, sir. How are you?
Good evening, guys. I'm very well, thank you.
Good. He is tanned, isn't he, Chris?
He's looking well. He's looking well.
looking really well. Steve, how are you, buddy? It's been about 6 months since we caught up with you last when we first got the story of Mera and the mummies.
It's been a bit crazy over the last 6 months with all the work that we've been involved with. I mean, we never expected this investigation to go on this long. We thought within the 6 month period we'll be able to call everything for what it is on this case and put it to bed. However, it doesn't seem that seems to have been the case, and of course, this just seems to prolong the investigation. And we're still heads in the investigation, even now. Coming over 12 months from the investigation now.
And we're still no nearer.
Well, yeah, we are. We're a lot nearer, and we've certainly called some of these discoveries for what they are. But it's what we're left with remains a little bit of a mystery, and of course we don't like mysteries.
No,
we don't like mysteries. We like to find out exactly what the situation is, and of course when we're left with a problem like this, then of course we just can't let it go. We've got to find out exactly what the situation is.
I've got a name for the show, Gunnar.
Go on.
Getting Nearer with Steve Mera.
Getting nearer to Mera with Steve Mera. I like it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been a lot of work, Steve. I mean, they say 6 months, and you're still heading towards where you need to be. That's a lot of work. I mean,
it's actually
a lot of time out of your other investigations.
Well, it's actually 13 months. It's actually from April.
Wow.
Yeah, it's 15 months nearly now on this investigation.
Steve, give us a quick one up then. Tell us a little bit about the story. Just give us a bit of background for it.
Yeah, well, as most people may have seen over the internet, it's a bit hard to miss all the stories developing around these three-fingered, I don't know what there were so many different people calling them so many different things. Three-fingered alien hybrid reptilian mummies and all sorts of things. Bottom line is three-fingered, three-toed bodies, which were discovered last year, apparently, from what the internet says, in Peru. The truth of the matter is that these first started appearing around about the end of 2016, and Mera, which is the large body which everyone seems to be talking about, not discovered until April 2017. And of course, we heard and saw a lot of things over the internet. Gaia, previously known as Gaiam TV, released probably one of the first videos, which was referred to as Unearthing Nazca, regarding Mera. And the short video piece, was just the first one of 6, I believe, which were later released by Gaia, in regards their investigation into what this body represented. One thing is actually for sure is that Mera is not a mummy. She has her internal organs within her body. So she is a body, not a mummy. And of course, what people like the reference over the internet, alien mummies found in Peru, and they like lots of hype. But I've been involved in these cases before. I think the last similar ones were the Montauk monster that washed up on Montauk Beach, and turned out to be a skinless raccoon. Then there was the Beast of Bookshaw, that was in the UK, where a whole village were distraught through this strange beast that was said to be half wild boar, half wolf, was terrorizing the village. It turned out to be nothing more than a Newfoundland hound dog.
Mm.
But we like to get in there. We like to get the messy cases because we're good at sorting out the rubbish, and away from the real facts. And of course, though we don't like to have so much media interest, unfortunately that would already happened on this particular case. But we decided to, there was so much stuff over the internet, it was just getting ridiculous. People saying that they were fake, people saying that they were real, arguments backwards and left and forward. And of course, the only really way to get to know what the actual answer is not to sit at the computer and you make your conclusive determinations based on what you've scavenged over the internet. You've got to get involved. You've got to find out for yourself. You've got to only trust your information that you rely upon, not anybody else putting theirs forward. Because, to be honest with you, people lie. People put disinformation out.
What? Steve, hang on. Are you kidding me? On the internet, people don't tell the truth.
No, they do. Absolutely. Especially regarding cases like this. Especially if it involves money, and cases like that.
Of course. Steve, I did want to ask something. You said that it was a body because it's got the internal organs inside, so it couldn't have been deliberately mummified. But was it deliberately preserved, or is this a natural process of desiccation just because of the location of the body?
The actual body, Mera, was purposely preserved with what is referred to, what initially people thought was plaster of Paris. And you know what? I agreed with them. It looked like plaster of Paris.
It does look it, yeah.
It turns out to be white diatomaceous earth. And you know what? It was purposely applied to the body. And it must have been purposely applied to the body about 1,400 to 1,800 years ago. And what's interesting is that someone had the knowledge of the preservative product within the actual dermatomaceous earth, because it keeps insects away from eating flesh and it keeps bodies preserved very, very well in that climate for thousands of years. So somebody somewhere knew how to preserve a body that long ago, utilizing diatomaceous earth, applying it to the actual body. We know from carbon-14 testing that the body is 1,400 to 1,800 years old. There's no shadow of a doubt there. But the covering is what you not normally see. Normal Peruvian mummies, which are buried in that same position, crouched position with their arms usually on the faces or around the legs, they usually are covered, in a preservative form, but that's usually, mud, liquid mud, which is applied to the body, or dirt, stuff like that. But this is actually diatomaceous earth. It actually preserves the body even better. But it was purposely applied to the body that long ago, so it's very interesting about who had the knowledge about the preservative power of diatomaceous earth.
This is it, Steve. Was this a common practice amongst people in Peru at the time?
No, not at all. The common practice of preserving bodies was utilising, like you dig up dirt and mud and you liquefy it with water, and basically you paint it on the body. You sit it in, or you move the body into a position as you want it to be in, which is usually in a sitting posture, and then they paint the body head to toe in this dirt or liquefied mud. And of course, it sets quite hard. It does preserve the body to some degree, but nothing like diatomaceous earth. This is the first time I've actually seen any Peruvian body come out white, because they're normally kind of a grey-brown colour. Yeah. Unless you're looking at bone. If you're looking at bone, then it's kind of a white starch colour. But the Peruvian bodies, the Peruvian people preserved the bodies in this mummified state. Well, not mummies, they actually were bodies. They didn't disembowel them. They didn't take out organs like the Egyptians did. So they didn't balm them, but they were definitely preserved as bodies. And when you actually see these, they're just sat in a normal sitting position. That the burial chambers are usually made from mud brick in the ground, and of course these are pillaged left, right, and centre on a regular basis. But it's the first one I've come across which has got this white colour, and we had to find out what that white colour represented. And when we found out what it did represent, we looked at the purities of the diatomaceous earth, and white might have been utilised, and its preservative, the purities inside the diatomaceous earth is quite amazing. And to utilise that as to preserve the body is actually even better than just applying dirt and mud. So it is very interesting.
Could that have been an accidental process, Steve? Do you think this is something they learned purely by an accident? I'd like to say water getting into this diatomaceous earth?
I don't think so, because diatomaceous earth is in the settlements of diatomaceous earth in several locations throughout Peru, and it's usually at very extreme altitudes at the top of mountains. And I think there was obviously something significantly different with this body, so they wanted to preserve her in a different manner. I don't think it's not a common thing. Like I say, it's the first one I've seen ever covered in diatomaceous earth, to be honest.
Steve, does it happen in other parts of the world? Is there any evidence from other cultures that preserve bodies that they've used this earth?
Not really, no. I mean, we've looked at the Inca, we looked at the Mayan, we looked at the Dogons, we looked at the Aborigines. It doesn't really matter where you look. You won't tend to find this purpose covering of diatomaceous earth. It's just what you do get is, coverings of dirt and mud, liquefied, which is painted onto bodies for preservative reasons. But they can be preserved extremely well with diatomaceous. In fact, some of the Peruvian bodies, which are such a dry climate, that you can still see the hair and even skin on the faces sometimes, because they've been preserved that well, just utilising dirt and liquefied mud, to be honest with you. But diatomaceous earth, this is the first one I've actually come across covered in this compound, and I don't know, I haven't seen it anywhere else throughout numerous different cultures and societies.
Steve, the other mummies that were found, if we can call them mummies, the other 6 or 7 that were found that you believe to be fake, of course, don't have ball joints and stuff like this, they're also covered in this diatomaceous earth, aren't they?
Yes. And then they may have been even doctored and, purposely applied to the bodies of these, well, let's call them for what they are. They're all fake. All the small ones, except for, we're dealing with 2 bodies here. We're dealing with Wawita, which is a small childlike body, aged, well, we're initially told aged around about 2 to 3 years of age. We believe she's a little bit older than that due to the teeth count, probably 4 to 5. Extremely small for her age. And Mera, which is also a body, both intact with their organs. Everything else that's come to light, such as the small skulls, the large hands, 3-fingered hands, the 29-inch bodies, the 12-inch bodies, all fake. Absolutely all of them. They're all made from animal bones, animal skin, and diatomaceous earth covering. Now, what leads me to because they're actually covered in diatomaceous earth, it might suggest that these small ones were manufactured around about that time, 1,400, 1,800 years ago. But they actually are manufactured. Maybe dolls to represent a deity. Maybe they're referring to Mera as a deity and wanted to make dolls, because the story goes that these small things were discovered in the same location as Mera. However, even that's becoming questionable over the period of time, but we like to call it exactly what it is, and those are absolutely fake. And we got secondary confirmation from Mark Holly, archaeologist Mark Holly from Warrington. You may know him. He's very well known, Mark. He spent over 40 years as an archaeologist. And we visited him. He looked at the skull, he looked at the scans, the photos, the x-rays, and he knew exactly what those represented. In fact, the skulls of these small beings at 29-inch and separated skulls on their own, which seem to show an elongated head with large eyes, slit for a mouth, again looks like to be covered in diatomaceous earth. Certainly is skull, certainly is absolutely bone. And of course, when you actually start to look at these very closely, you realise very quickly it's manufactured from canine skulls, dog skulls, and the part of the skull, which is the back part of the dog's head, and then the front part of it, which is cut away, is completely manufactured and packed. And that's what makes these skulls. Now, what's interesting is that, when you start utilising 1,000-year-old skin from animals, and it's interesting to know that Peruvian people, like the Egyptians, were buried with the pets. The dogs were buried with them, so finding, dog skulls and dog bones and skin and stuff like that is going to be easy, very easy to find. And in fact, they are easy. I've seen the bones. It's one of those places in Peru where you can just walk along for a mile or so, and there's just bones scattered all over the place. It's pretty crazy. It's hard to believe, but that's the situation. And of course, easy to manufacture to get hold of with animal bones, animal skin, could be over 1,000 years old. And of course, with diatomaceous earth as well. Well, if you're going to have these analysed, what are you going to come back with? Well, I'll tell you, you're going to come back with 1,000-year-old skin, 1,000-year-old bones from animals, and probably 20 million-year-old diatomaceous earth. So, carbon 14, analysis on these small ones is just a complete waste of time. And I do know people which have spent time and money doing that, and there's just no reason for it whatsoever. And of course, what drew our attention on this investigation was, in fact, the two bodies. We wanted to focus on them because we knew absolutely these two represent real bodies. And of course, if there are anomalies with these bodies, we want to know how.
Mm. Do you think, Steve, that looking at the smaller bodies that are there, do they kind of show the ability or the technical ability of these people to fake? And what does that say about Maria? Because she's completely different, isn't she?
She is, yeah. I mean, the first thing that we realise is that there are a number of researchers out there, I'm not going to name them, people know who they are, that are pushing out the idea and the theory that these small ones are real. They're 29 inches tall, and even some lovely spent some great money on making these lovely 3D animations of these 29-inch creatures walking around, which amazes me because they have no ball joints in their bodies whatsoever. None in their hips, none in their arms, no nasal passages, disconnection of bones within the body, no lungs, no capability of walking or even moving. They're clearly just dolls, But there are researchers out there which are pushing these as real and trying to point out some strange markings on their backs, such as a piece of skin that looks, what they're saying is reptilian.
Mm.
However, I'll tell you exactly what the markings are on those small ones on the back where the skin is. Yes, there is pitting in that skin. And they're actually trying to tell people that it's reptilian. And in fact, it's hair. It's just dog hair. It's dog skin. It's animal skin. And over 1,000 years, they lose the hair.
Mm.
And what's left from that is the cuticle marks. I can only explain it really as if you see a chicken skin, when they've been
the dimples, yeah.
You can see these marks, the cuticle marks, yeah.
Mm.
You can see these places where the hairs were, or feathers were, should we say. But it's the same thing with dog fur and animal fur. When they lose the hair, you have these pitting, and of course they look at all these bits and trying to identify it as something reptilian. So it's just a play on words, that's not the case whatsoever. It's a simple explanation. It's actually animal fur. It's just lost its fur.
Steve, looking at those, and I wanted to ask this question. You mentioned kind of the scaly element to it. Is there an argument to say that it might be fish scales? That it might actually be fish skin? I know one of the things, and they use this now, don't they, in sort of modern treatments of certain ailments like burns and things like this. They actually use the fish skin as a cover. So I wondered if that might be what we're looking at. That isn't what it is.
No. What they've used is real animal skin. Yeah, we know that they've used real animal skin. The skin's around, it's easy to get hold of. You can utilise it to wrap it, and then basically they can keep it together by applying diatomaceous earth.
Yeah.
To it, because it acts as a resin compound which holds it pretty much everything together in a rigid state as it dries. And they are head to toe completely manufactured with animal bone and animal skin. Now, when it comes to Maria, the only notable unusuality regarding the skin on Maria is around about the chin area. She does have some unusual marking around the chin. Now, there was initially said to be unusual marking around her back. And when photographs were initially taken by other researchers, tried to make it out that Maria was actually reptilian in nature because of these marks. And it was a funny shaped patterning. And I have to admit, it did look a little bit scaly. However, turns out to be Maria was actually wrapped. She was covered in diatomaceous earth and then had a cloth wrapping around her. Her head popped out of the wrapping, just around the body, and it was tight to the skin. And of course, that's been removed. When that was removed, what happened is the underneath diatomaceous earth had crystallized with the cloth. So removing the cloth left the pattern of the cloth on the skin,
of course,
to some degree. And that patterning on the skin looked very reptilian-like, like a snake. And of course, that's all it was.
So to all intents and purposes, Steve, like a plaster of Paris. So like having if you break your arm at the end, and you go to the doctors. Yeah. And then they basically put this over the top, and I guess as the plaster of Paris sets, it almost takes on what's underneath. So in this case, the hessian or the fabric.
That's it, and it's the pattern of the fabric across the back that causes that. But taking into consideration, there is those markings on the actual chin. Now that was an area which wouldn't have been covered. And looking where the diatomaceous earth compound is away somewhat, there does seem to be some unusual marking around the chin area. Kind of very bubbly, the skin around there.
Is it the something with the skin, or is it like a mark, like a tattoo or something like that?
No, it actually looks like the actual skin from the close-up images that we've got. I mean, we did very close-up images on that. And so it does actually look like there's an effect on the skin around the chin area. So we can't seem to find that anywhere else. But then she was at the time still covered in 75% of the diatomaceous earth, which can hide a multitude of things underneath, on that skin. But where it had come away from around the chin area, you can clearly see there was definitely some unusual shaping of the skin. I don't really know what it was, to be honest with you. It wasn't the scales, but it was very, very, very bumpy, and it was like having lots of little bumps all together, and it's quite unusual.
Perhaps some sort of disease or scarring or something?
Good shot,
It didn't look to be scarring. It looked more natural in origin. It might be so down to some disease that we're unaware of, or less something was done. I know that in some countries you used to put, tiny little pellets underneath the skin, and in markings and stuff. But I couldn't see no marking, so it's left it open a little bit unusual there, to be honest with you. We don't know what the unusual skin shaping around and the marks on the skin around the chin area actually represents at this time, except for it's a little unusual.
Very unusual. So, Steve, you collected all of your samples. Have you collected more than one group of samples, or was it just that initial time that you went to investigate in Peru?
There's been 2 lots of samples that have been taken. Which what we needed to do is.
Oh, hey there, Steve. We've got a freeze out, Chris.
We do, don't we? I wondered if it was just me and you.
It looks like we've. Oh, are you back, Steve?
Yeah, I'm here.
You froze out for a second, bud. What was you saying?
All right. I was just saying that there's been a number of reports that have been carried out by numerous different people, about at least 5-6 reports. What's interesting when you read them is how much they contradict each other. And what this is one thing you shouldn't have in science. Science is science. The data is the data. The conclusion is the conclusion. And that should not alter. When you've got 6 reports which are all saying different things, it's very, very questionable. We've got one report that even says she's 70% unknown. In other words, 70% alien as of the.
Wow.
And then you've got one report that clearly says Maria is male on page 1. Go to page 3, she says she's female. Now, in a scientific document like that, of such importance, can you imagine having something as simple as that, getting that wrong? it just the whole thing is biased then.
Well, yeah, it invalidates everything else, doesn't it? After that,
Well, it does, and then you start to look at who's these reports been done. Well, they said they've been carried out by these doctors and this doctor, and then you start to check the background of these doctors, and you start to realise very quickly that they said that they're associated to this establishment when you can't find anything about that establishment. They call themselves a president when there's only probably 4 of them, actually work for this department, which you can't seem to find. It's very questionable regarding some of their qualifications and the checkable background. And of course, they're coming out with these fantastic claims on these reports. And I'm surprised how much they're actually carried forward as factual, when in fact there's just, I'm not aware of anybody. As far as I'm concerned, when we got involved in this case, we got involved in official capacity working for the Inkari Institute, which had the bodies. So we're the only official investigation team that's actually come in there and seem to have done it properly, because the first thing that we did is we made sure we had a professional chain of custody for all samples. Because if you cannot prove the samples that you've got match the conclusions that you find, forget it. This is just not worth it. You can't prove it. How do you know that sample hasn't been swapped, changed, doctored? You've got to have a professional chain of custody, and I don't think anybody else has done it.
I don't think anybody else has done it, Stephen. It's absolutely critically important, isn't it, that actually happens as well?
I mean, in a court of law, anything would be thrown out if you do have check.
It must have been a race against time for you. Bearing in mind that the sample is constantly degrading. It's been outside. It's not being handled correctly. How difficult was it to get the information and to make sure that the information that you were getting was correct and untarnished?
Well, it was, as I previously stated, going to Peru hard enough, because it's so high in the altitude there that we ended up with, as soon as we got off the plane, we were hit by altitude sickness and nausea and the heat, and of course, and exhaustion from all the traveling. And we had to just, no time to just rest, get straight to it. And we did. That very same day, interviews. And we interviewed everybody who's had seen these bodies and been involved with these bodies. The Huacaros, which are these illegal grave robbers, literally came into the Inkari Institute and dumped them on the counter and said, look, 2 things we want to make this clear. We own them and we'll be back for them, but we want to know what they are. And of course, Inkari Institute was in the midst of dealing with a media frenzy at the time over the internet, as well as the general press turning up. And they didn't really know how to deal with it. So in came us to try and sort of help them out. And we were surprised to have access to the body. In fact, we were taken to a secret location the following day, which is the second day in there, taken up to the top of the Andes, about 14,500 feet. It was just all and nothing but condor up there. And we were taken to a rundown place and had the opportunity to film the bodies. And it was very risky, to be honest with you. We were dealing with caros. We thought we were going to get mugged, lose equipment, anything could have happened. We've had death threats, because we were trying to figure out where these came from. But we decided to keep at it. And of course, looking over the bodies, we immediately, as Barry would say, looking at those smaller bodies was just like looking at roadkill, maybe nothing, until when you saw Mera, which is a real body, be lifted on top of onto the examination table. And of course, we're presented with scans and x-rays and stuff. And yes, she does have some unusual things, Now, when our guys, we don't hold back. They're from Gene Tech Laboratory in Sri Lanka. It's as simple as that. These guys are world-renowned, award-winning. They're the guys that train CSI specialists for investigations. They know what they're doing. So, we've got nothing to hide. That's the place. Okay, we use scientists, we use professors. Known guys, been involved in this field for a long time. People that know their names. And the skeletal experts, the skeletal specialists, we looked over everything that we presented on Mera. What we found was that Maria's skull does have normal visual sutures, just as you would find in a child's skull. Nothing unusual there. So Maria's skull does not look like anything like the Paracas skulls, even though that her actual head is elongated to some degree. It's probably down to boarding. She does have unusual ridges on the frontal bone area, which is a little bit unusual. She also has an unusual mandible hinge socket, which is around about the jaw area. She has a smaller cerebrum area at the back of the skull, which is, again, a little unusual. Bottom canines or lower canines are longer than average for the size of the skull. So she certainly must have been an meat-eater.
So, Steve, have you had any conclusions from the teams that you've sent these samples and these images to about what these anomalies could mean?
The anomalies, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, apart from finding that there's a slightly larger brain mass compared to the size, because we have to go off the size of the skull, it's all in compartmental sizing. It has a protruding mouth area, small nose, notable skull elongation, and of course, all this is all wrapped up as to how does these anomalies happen. And of course, that lies within the DNA. When you're actually constructively looking for the DNA and trying to find out mitochondrial, metadNA, you start to find a number of things. First things first is that she has a larger orbital rim. In other words, her eye sockets are larger than average for the size of the skull, especially in the Peruvian area. Because, they get a lot of light up there in Peru. Humans slightly, it's like any animal, we adapt to our environment. If you measure the width of the orbital rims of people that live in countries where there's less light, then they'll have slightly larger eyes, and slightly larger orbital rims. In hot places and sunny places like Peru, you'd expect to have a slightly smaller orbital rim with slightly or smaller eyes. And of course, that's just basic, microevolutionary stages. But what we're seeing in Mera is large orbital rims. She doesn't really, it's not befitting for the location where she's from. And
Steve,
of course, she's 4'9" to 5'2", doesn't have any ears, only ear canal. So looking at the side of Maria's head looks like a seal, no ears whatsoever. And the temporal bone, in fact, is actually an unusual shape as well, which is in the head.
Steve, is she subterranean?
Well, that's questionable. I mean, when you start to look at 3 long fingers and 3 long toes, the first thing that goes through your mind is rather A, she's a tree climber, or B, she's an amphibian. The only thing to support that she may have been a tree climber would be the slight difference between the gap between her radius and ulna in her arms. These are the 2 bones in our arms, and of course, we have a certain gap between them. There's a slightly larger gap between, which would suggest that she would have had more muscle in those arms. So yeah, she was probably quite strong. She was lived to adult age. But the downside is there is no trees. There's no trees up there. No, it's not an area where you get trees, and of course we have to question. Is it even though how authentic are the actual fingers and toes? Because there's the biggest thing that makes Maria different than anybody else is those long 3 fingers and long 3 toes. And that is probably the problematics of it. However, when it comes down to the DNA, this is what you can't change. Because like I've said to people, it doesn't matter if Maria's got 10 toes and 10 fingers and 2 heads. The DNA is the DNA, and that can't change. It cannot be manipulated or altered.
What's it telling us, Steve?
Well, it's telling us that Maria's mostly primate. She's like you and me. She's primate. We fall into the primate as well. And there's different ranges of primate. We've got the bonobos, which is the nearest to us. Which is sometimes it's a type of chimpanzee. The bonobos. It's 99.6% primate. The chimpanzee is 98.6, and the gorilla is 98. But what I try and keep telling people is, it only takes 1% to be a massive, massive difference. You take the mouse, look how much a mouse looks different to us. They're 92% DNA similarity to a human. 92. And that's a mouse. Hey, if you want to even check out a banana DNA similarities to human is 50%.
So technically what you're telling me is it's half human.
It's half. It's half DNA similarities, and a banana is 50%. It's crazy. It really is. Well, what I'm trying to get to people is, the microscopic amount of percentage means so much. Now, according to the information that we've got, there's a good chance Maria might fall around about the 98.5, which kind of falls in between the chimpanzee and the gorilla. However, she looks nothing like a chimpanzee or gorilla. She looks more humanoid.
And there's no trees.
Course, yeah, she's primate. She's like you and me. And, well, the thing is, there is these alterations, and how those alterations taking place. Well, the first thing is that our scientists and our doctors have said that according to the data that they have and the images and the scans and the x-rays and photographs and video, that they don't seem to think that those fingers, the hands or the feet have been altered anatomically, which would suggest that she does have 3 fingers, didn't have 5 or thumb and the finger on the thumb. And the same for the toes. And that the hands and the feet do belong to the body. We've done DNA testing on that. We know that, it's a primate. From a primate foot, it's a female. We knew it was a female anyway due to the rib count on Maria. And but this is where it starts to get very, very interesting. This is why we've not dropped this case yet. And that's simply because within the DNA and the chromosome, and what we would refer to as the chromosomal allelic data, okay, that would suggest that there might be a single maternal lineage between Wawita, the small one, and the large one, which is Maria, which is referred to in the mtDNA. But within that is what you refer to as hectomoplasmy. Now that hectomoplasmy, when you look at the levels of this, it suggests a huge mutation, metaDNA mutation. Now, that metaDNA mutation, we have never found anything. There's no disease on planet Earth that's been listed or is currently still around these days that can cause the mutation like it has to take place throughout the Maria body. In other words, the mutation is also symmetric. It's what appears on one side of the body appears enormously on the other side. And there is no befitting disease for it. The amount of metadata that we've got in regarding the hectomoplasmy would suggest Maria should never even survive early childhood, let alone reach adulthood with that amount of mutation in the body. Now, is this mutation, which is, hang on a second, this is where the crux of the matter is. This is why we have something significant. We don't care about everything else. We don't care how Maria looks, because at the end of the day, anyone can alter something professionally by taxidermists, Professional taxidermists can come in there and do something which can fool doctors, that can widen eye sockets by filing them down, can cut off ears and hide them away by covering them in diatomaceous earth. These are all, anybody knows it. I'm just the same as anybody out there. I like to call it as it is, but I find it hard to believe that these things are anything but human. Now, at the end of the day, though, something that cannot be changed is what we've got, the DNA. And the hectomoplasmy shows something quite very, very unusual. It's not been seen before. Now, I don't know if Maria is real with 3 fingers and 3 toes, or she was dug up by Wajaros, grave robbers, and professionally altered by professional taxidermists that could fool doctors. But it don't matter, because I think what might have happened is, if that is the case, they've dug up a body which, unbeknown to them, had an amazing DNA, and they didn't even know. And the crux of the matter is that we've got this metaDNA mutation now, and it's not befitting to anything within the history class.
Asylum. So Steve, how rare is she? I mean, is she a missing link? Is she a hybrid? Is she an amphibious subterranean creature from The Shape of Water, as me and Chris were just discussing?
Yeah, we just thought it's basically the movie Shape of Water, isn't it?
Beautiful film. Beautiful film.
Well, I've come across this loads of times. It's the same old questions being asked over and over again. And I can only say But what I'm finding, she's primate. She's like you and me. She's a primate. Though, do you reference her as humanoid? That's unusual, and we don't know. She might actually represent something which is a new evolutionary path. Something that's in between. Falls in between the evolutionary process.
The missing link, potentially. Is she a completely different species altogether, Steve?
Well, no, I mean, she's primate. I mean, she's no much different really to you and me. However, because of the difference in it, we know it's not befitting to any disease that we know. The nearest disease that we have, that bone alterations, are things like Marfan disease. And well, that causes an elongation and a longing of the bones, stretching and altering, and it doesn't create new bones. Maria's got more bones in her body than the human body, generally, but she does fall under primate.
This is it, though, Steve, isn't it? I think you'd have those hallmarks, wouldn't you, if certain things had taken place? If it was gigantism or elephantism, whatever it is, you'd see those hallmarks.
Absolutely, she's just a real mystery, and we don't. This is a problem because we haven't got a box to put Maria in, so to speak.
Could it be a previously unknown disease then? I mean, I know you
an ancient disease, Chris.
It's something we don't know about.
Oh, well, there's always diseases that can cause mutations to take place, but never should a disease create a body in the way it has done, because a disease attacks the body and makes changes. What it shouldn't do is grow extra bones and put them in a position with muscle and tendons to make them work symmetrically across the body either side. It's just, it don't work like that. It's like a jigsaw puzzle thrown together, with mutations. You'd never get that, that order of things to that degree. And this is what's so unusual. Now, the only thing, we can't find an earthly explanation for that mutation at this time. It doesn't exist. There isn't a box to put it in. People asking, what is she? Well, there's no box to fit her in. This is the problem. She's not devised to fit in with what we currently know.
So she's the only Maria, basically.
Yeah, the Maria body. And the only thing that really could constitute that amount of mutation in the body is probably cosmic radiation. Well, that's not an earthly phenomenon. That'd have to be up there in, at least ionospheric or even further to have that much, cosmic radiation to cause that mutation. But then, would it do it in such an orderly fashion? It's questionable. So, of course, this is where we've got a real problem, because we probably would have walked away from this case and said, well, there's a very good likely point that they've been manufactured, altered, and they're all rational explanations. However, the science is the science, and when you come back with tests which are replicatable, you're getting the same thing. You start to question, okay, what's that constitute? Well, it constitutes something that we can't fit in because there isn't anything else to fit it in with. You've got a round hole with a square peg at this moment in time, and there's nothing there to categorize her. But the downside of this is that there are our information puts a price tag on Maria's head, and that price tag is $1 million. And we're trying to get the bodies released to Peruvian government. We're working with NASCA as well, with the mayor in NASCA. And it's proved to be very difficult because the people that have those bodies now, we believe is the Inkari Institute, and the president of the Inkari Institute, Thierry Hamming, who many people will know has spread rumours and fraudulent tales across the internet, bigging all these things up, and where they were discovered, and artifacts, and all sorts of things, just to make a quick buck. And that's the downside of it, and it's nothing new for Peru. Anybody will tell you.
Oh, Steve, come back.
Peru.
Here he is.
Yeah.
There he is. He was just telling us that anyone would tell us.
Anyway, and then he stopped telling us.
Yeah, anyone would tell us. that, the problematics of things in Peru, you've got a lot of people which are, living on the breadline and they'll do anything to sell anything. And it happens on a regular basis. Maria has $1 million price tag on her. We are battling with Cairos, we are battling the Peruvian government because that rabbit hole goes all the way back to some high authorities, believe it or not, which are on the tape, to be honest with you. There's corruption at every level in Peru, and well, boy, don't we know about the death threats. We've even at this moment in time over the last week, we've got somebody who works privately for the Peruvian government trying to dig up any dirt on myself and Barry to try and discredit us. The problematics for them is that we haven't got any. We aren't just two guys off the street who have come along and done this case. We're known to call it as it is. We've used top guys, the best places that we could find to do the analysis and trustworthy. Then good luck to them. They won't find anything. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. I would have walked away, like I said, and thought it was all fake if it wasn't down to the unusuality in the DNA. And that's why she does represent something very unusual. But as for the rest of them, I like to just call it as it is. The fake people want to make money on it. They want to do programs and lectures and all sorts of things. Let them do it. But at the end of the day, I think people are getting a bit wiser and starting to realise very quickly that a lot of this stuff is fake.
So there's two distinct things going on here then. There's the clearly faked smaller stuff, and then there's the two larger bodies that appear to be genuine.
The Maria, 4'9" to 5'2" body, and Wawita, the small child, are absolutely 100% real bodies with their organs intact. May share a single maternal lineage between them. And the Wawita was significantly damaged in DNA that we couldn't retain that much from Wawita. Maria, though, we actually got a hit. And that hit in that DNA, the metadNA, shows this huge mutation. A huge mutation that we cannot identify. And science can't find anything to match it. And really, we need to go back and because science will say, yes, it's okay getting the goodies and throwing them on the top and say, yes, this is what we've got. But science requires you to go back and do exactly the same thing again and get the same results. This is what you call
further test.
It is. It's the replication. It's the bench testing process to prove your first or second results. If we did that, our scientist guys will come forward. They'll throw a seminar together. To be honest with you, a scientific seminar because they're that interested.
Steve, you mentioned the money that was on offer, and you mentioned how it can change lives in these parts of the world. Is she even more priceless now as a result of your findings? Because
probably, and that's the downside to it, though, really, which is upsetting. It was upsetting enough to see it degrading just from our first and second visit.
Because now the concern is that these guys are going to be back out there looking for more genetic anomalies like this, because we've got something that is anomalous and is incredibly rare here.
Yeah, absolutely. There is the possibility, and because we have been in talks with people on the ground in Peru, putting us in touch with people which are professional taxidermists, which might suggest that they have professionally, medically altered Maria's fingers and toes and widened the eye sockets by filing down and just messed about with.
But there must be evidence of that, and your guys, you said yourself, didn't you, to me? Your guys said there's no way that they can see that from the images that they've seen already. They would have to investigate themselves.
Yeah, they're honest. They say, look, from the scans, from the photographs, from the X-rays and the video, we can confirm that we cannot find evidence of medical alteration, anatomic alteration, even down to the tendons. To me, though, you know me, and I find things hard to believe because mostly it's usually a rational explanation. And I'm thinking to myself, well, how can our guys? How sure are they? 99.9%? Well, that still leaves 0.1%. And that 0.1% might mean simply because they've not gone there and laid their hands on Maria in a physical examination. We've had to do it.
What's the likelihood of getting that to happen, Steve?
Wow, this is it. Okay, we want that to happen. What happened was we were clouted with 50 grand up front. Yeah. For us to do that. Now, this is because
Gunnar, you might be able to help him out there.
I've got 50p.
This is the problem. People think, these amazing discoveries might not get out because there's a world government order, or there's some secret society, or the American government stepped in there and they don't want to get it out. No, I'll tell you what it is. It's simple greed. It's human greed. That's it. And if we're ever going to find anything of any significance, how on earth are we going to get past this?
You're absolutely right. Absolutely.
We are our own demise in this game.
Absolutely.
And this is the problem of it. It's all down to greed. And a significant thing like this could change the history books.
Yeah.
Could change it. Could simply change this whatsoever. It means that, instead of reading the general thing of evolutionary path, there was something else in there. We found it, we've always finding new things. Then new form of Neanderthal, new form of Neolithic man.
Yeah.
It does change. So maybe this could represent something, but we might not ever get to it.
Other examination could prove otherwise and drop the price massively, which they would equally be unhappy about.
Well, there might be a reason why we were slapped with a 50 grand bill up front, because maybe they don't want our scientists to go and conduct the physical examination of Maria, because it might reveal something that they don't want revealing. But you know what? I keep telling them it doesn't matter, because the science is the science and the DNA is DNA. And if you were daft enough to go and dig up a body and alter it when you never needed to, because of unbeknown to them, her DNA was so freaking weird that it constitutes a scientific discovery. They didn't even know.
I was going to say, Steve, do you think they dug this body up and thought, we'll adapt this, we'll make some money out of it, it'll be brilliant, and then realised that they got something that they never could have anticipated?
Yeah, I think that's what it is now. Maybe that's why we got the 50 grand slap. Who knows? But the thing is that, there's a very twisted story regarding these findings. And of course, what we've done is through the information we've been provided, we have an idea of where she was discovered. And of course, this is when the death threats started coming. You're going to end up dead. You can see this shallow grave, and no one's going to find you, and all these sort of things. I just ignored them. I've ignored the emails, I've ignored the threats, and just carry on as you do. Because these people live on that. But at the end of the day, we do think we may have found the location where she's coming from. And funny enough, she's right in the bang of a magnetic anomaly.
Right.
Which there's many in the Nazca region. And when you do start looking around that satellite imagery, what you start to find is a photograph, Google photograph, of a absolute pitted mountaintop with little black dots. And all those black dots are graves they've dug up. And they're in the thousands. And you can see diatomaceous earth in that location as well. And just a kilometre or so far away, you can see, and this is right on the top of the mountain, there's no roads in or out, there's no paths in or out for 100 miles or so. There's no villages, there's nothing. But right on the top of this mountain is a perfect circular 80-foot circle, flat, marked perfectly on the top of this mountain. And we're curious what the hell that is. And then when we went back to look at further Google images, we found that the whole area where the grave robbing had been taking place had been completely cleared. So it just seemed that, by efforts unknown, somebody wants to make sure that, the evidence of these, pillaging of these graves is also going unknown. And of course, evidence is swept away by the side, by the way,
Why, Steve? Why would people want to bury what could change the planet? What could change the future?
Well, if something such as significance like this, then it's worth a lot of money to the right people. People don't think about surrendering it to science. People think about how much money can I make? Can I sell this? Can I make money? Can I give it to a collector? Will he pay for it? And this is how it ends up on the black market. We've interviewed people from the ministry in Peru, and the British government department that are, responsible for, trying to deal with illegal, black market incidents. And of course, it's rife. They can't deal with it. They've told us we can't deal with it. And it's no surprise, whilst we were there during the international press announcement, which was certainly premature because there were no DNA results then anyway, which was delivered in Lima, the capital of Peru. that the government themselves had kind of got 1,000. Now, don't ask me how they do this. They got about 3,000 doctors to come forward and sign a petition to say that Mera was fake and that not to trust it. It's all down to the black market. She'd been doctored, and they might be true. But why do that? Because how does so many doctors put their name to a list and confirm it without actually visiting, without actually examining? Now, I don't know any our doctor won't do that. I don't know any doctors that were quite happy to put their name to something without them actually even conducting a physical examination. None of them had. All the information that they had was scavenged over the internet. And the conclusion, yes, we know she's fake. Well, how did they know that? I'd been there, I'd examined her, and I didn't know, let alone them. So that was a ruse. That was done purposely by the Peruvian government to show that there was a disinterest in this body. And they did that on purpose. And that was the reason for that. Is assumably that they did not want her to go be sold on the black market, to devalue her and make sure that she's kept in the country so that they eventually get their hands on it. Because whilst we were there, the police authorities were doing raids. The government were all over us. We had to be very careful about who we were talking to because they wanted to know where the bodies were, and we were right bang in the middle of it between, the huacaros and the government breathing down on it. So,
you mentioned, Steve, this sort of what appears to be almost like, sounds like a burial mound with all of these sort of cairns across the top of it.
There's a Google image that shows all these little black dots. And what they are is that the graves, the dug up graves, pillagers in the hundreds, in the thousands across the mountains.
Was she deified, do you think? Did they know she was special during her life, and did they some way, like say, deify her, or was there evidence of that within the cairn itself or the burial place itself?
There's a good possibility that someone knew she was different. Someone knew she was special. She was treated.
3, 2, 1. Steve. 3, 2. I wanted to hear that, Chris.
Yeah.
Oh, Steve. Oh. Are you there, buddy?
I think we've lost him.
Give
it a second, see if he comes back.
See if he drops back in.
Yeah, we're native Peruvian people manufacturing these small ones.
Steve,
we lost you about she was treated differently.
All right. Well, she was probably treated differently as a deity, maybe. There's a reason why she looks different, prepared different, preserved differently. And the smaller bodies, maybe they were done as dolls, to represent her, something special. That's the only thing I can think of. I have no other explanation for it.
Do you think then, Steve, that these things play a part in the legends? That maybe these things have been discovered for thousands of years and there is no explanation for them. So could that give rise to some of the legends from these parts of the world about such creatures?
Well, it's not just those parts.
No, it isn't.
As you very well know. Yeah. These things have turned up all over the world. Three-fingered beings are very well noted in ancient societies, in Ireland, in Scotland, in Wales, in England, and all over the world. In Europe, South American countries, and in North America, they're everywhere. And they're ancient. But the Nazca people, when we talked to them, they said, oh yeah, we know about them because our ancients, our ancestors dealt with them. They were to be feared. You don't mess with them. And on many occasions, the sacrifice of 9 or 10-year-old children were being taken up to caves and in these locations where these are said to be and left and never to be seen again. And that's interesting that they do 9 or 10 years of age because that's when the chemicals in the body, the biological system starts to change. You have to question what appears in the biological changes of a child 9 or 10 years of age, which might be being sacrificed. Why are they picking that age? Then there's certain chemicals and biological changes taking place, which might indicate the reasons why they seem to be interested in children of that age. And that probably falls down to the possibility of what you might call mucous membranes. The mucous membrane holds all those characteristics and information to help us beat bacteria and diseases. It's questionable. You can research this forever and go in so many different directions.
It's funny, didn't the Egyptians do something similar about this mucous membrane?
They did, yeah. And I think they were onto something regarding the how to survive bacterial diseases and stuff, you know. Maybe it's the same thing. But one thing we do know, you know, that they're present even very current incidents. You know, if you take the A70 alien abduction case in Scotland, you follow the A70, look at it, check it with cross-examine it with magnetic anomalies. You'll find that the A70 passes right through the heart of it. That's where the incident took place. And you know, what we find is this is the only, you know, the Ministry of Defence investigating it. You know, there's a document on it. You can find it on the internet. Three-fingered beings, small three-fingered beings, which allegedly interacted with them during this experience. And of course, it's not there. It's all over the world. You know, there are references all over. There's representations of three fingers all over the world. You know, you might find them in the cave in Ireland. You might even find them in an Italian church. You might find them in the caves of Mexico. You know, or petroglyphs around. You know, like they're scattered all over. So there's definitely something. I mean, age-old Irish stuff. The old fairies, you know, depicted very similar. You know, it's just different reference. And as Barry would say, you know, same phenomenon, different mask. You know?
Yes.
As you know very well.
Don't remind me about Ireland. Still scarred now, Steve. No, I'm joking. What an amazing experience it was. Buddy, last question, because we have run out of time for you. Just quickly, why the magnetic anomaly, and why is that important in this case?
It is, because for the last 3 years, we've been cross-referencing magnetic anomalies with incidents. And you can prove it yourself, you know?
Yeah, well, you know my work, Steve. I've been looking at the very same thing.
You'll know by looking at it and cross-references, as you get the hit after hit after hit after hit. If it's not the Mothman prophecy, you know, the Mothman sightings, if it's not the Hopkinsville UFO incident in Kentucky, if it's not the one that took place in the woods, Flatwoods alien that took place, they're all in hotbeds, absolutely every one of them. Skinwalker Ranch as well, and places in Ireland, places in Scotland. These are areas of activity. Now, whilst we were in America recently, we put it to the test again. And we've done this 3 or 4 times. And this test, again, 32 minutes in the location of an area where there's a magnetic anomaly, we had a significant major incident, sighting that took place. And I've not seen anything like that for a long time. And that was exceptional. And we were there 32 minutes, so it proves the theory. You know, there's a connection between the UFO phenomena, cryptids, paranormal, you name it, utilizing. And what I'll tell you, just finish on this. I recently talked to Linda about this, Linda Morton-Howe.
Yeah.
And she's been helping me on this case for quite some time. She's fantastic support for Linda. And even she is aware of information regarding magnetic anomalies coming from high sources, talking about a connection between UFO and cryptids back from the 80s. Yeah. You know, when she got that information. So we're definitely onto something. Maria, we believe, has come from a similar location in the Peruvian, in Nazca.
I think you should name the place Shugbarrow or Shugborough. You know, Steve, Shugborough is a mile away from me and Chris, just down the road. But the name Shug or Shuk means black dog or devil, or maybe even devil's resting place. And it has a really strange kind of similarity, doesn't it, to what we're talking about here? This magnetic anomaly again, which happens all the way around Rugeley, my hometown. You know, this sort of cryptid kind of angle, ufological angle as well. All of this sort of stuff, you know, that kind of comes into it. So maybe Steve, the ancients knew what was there and did revere it. You know,
I think they've been utilising these for a long time. An ancient man, we realised what was going on. We built places, you know, we built resonance chambers and all sorts of things there, because we thought about passing, you know, how to control the doorway, how to get in and out of these portals. And of course, I think we realised once we were doing it, we thought it's more important to keep out what was trying to get in.
I was going to say, don't get me started on transdimensional beings, because we've had that conversation about Maria before as well. Maybe she slipped through a portal. Or something. Mr. Mera, thanks very much for speaking to us today. We have run out of time. There's a pressing matters at hand, I think, for Chris and for myself as well. Steve, where next with this story for you? I mean, more research to be done?
Yeah, more research to be done. I know that the headliners have been snapping, the reports have been snapping at our ankles since we've come back from the US. So we went exclusive for this material to Contact in the Desert, which, you know, went very well. And of course, we do know it's going to be appearing in press all around the country within the next week. We just want to get the information out. We'll let people know what is fake is fake. But we do have an anomaly regarding Maria, and it's going to require further testing. And we just keep our fingers crossed that we manage to get that done one day, and really hope that she just doesn't disappear from society and to be seen again.
It highlights a need, doesn't it, for a concerted effort to make sure that these things are protected and researched properly, whether it be by the Peruvian government, we as a wider community, or the general public itself. These things are exceptionally rare, Stephen, and an incredible anomaly. Top work, my friend. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I couldn't have done it without Barry, and Barry can't join us on the call tonight.
I thought he was going to thank us then, Chris. I thought he was going to say, could have done it without us.
We'll leave it for next time.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks very much, guys.
Mr. Mera, thanks very much. Take it easy, my friend. Speak to you soon.
Cheers, Steve. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Wicked then, CK. The Asylum, Mr. Steve Mera today talking about Maria. How cool was that?
Fantastic stuff. Really interesting. I mean, so too much to digest, I think, at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much information coming from Stephen from this particular case, isn't there? So, but interesting little insight as well. So she's a genetic anomaly. She's completely random and very, very strange. A bit like you, fella.
Could be anything.
Yes, you could. I'm only teasing. Right, CK, time is pressing on for me and you. Let's get out of here and we'll wrap this one up and get it onto the internet.
See you later. Be lucky.
Be lucky. See you soon. Bye.
Bye.